The transformation of winter to spring brings with it hundreds and thousands of migratory waders, commonly known as shorebirds, which forage and roost in the temperate climate of the Australian coast. Fleeing the Arctic regions in which they breed, many journey up to 25,000 kilometres through the East Asian-Australasian flyway, sometimes without food or rest. So when they reach the warm, rich coast of Australia, they are exhausted. But to their surprise, the beautiful intertidal foraging and roosting grounds which they have invested their long journey for are gone, replaced by a sea wall, man's way of blocking the effects of climate change. You may already know the oceans are rising due to global warming. The world is getting hotter, and melting glaciers are expanding oceanic mass, causing sea levels to rocket by 0.09 to 0.88 metres, predicted by the SPRES, Special Report on Emissions Scenarios.
But what you may not know is that seawalls built directly on the shoreline to prevent seawater encroaching inland fragments 4 crucially linked trophic zones, which in turn restricts interspecies interactions and declines the population size of migratory waders.
The 4 zones are called the upland, the supertidal zone, the intertidal zone, and the subtidal zone. Commonly, the flow begins with the sea. Organic waste and primary producers such as diatoms, small algae, are often very abundant and are eaten by filter feeders like phytoplankton and benthic invertebrates, meaning bottom-dwelling, like bivalve mollusks. Zooplankton and gastrosacus eat the phytoplankton, which are eaten by small crustaceans, then various fish, scavengers, and larger crustaceans. Waders find bivalve mollusks, crustaceans, and interstitial worms a particular delicacy, and on their departure back to the Northern Hemisphere, the average weight gained between 5 studies of migratory waders was 52.6% body mass. So if shorebirds, a top predator, disappear from this food web, what often happens is the stable state flips, changing what was once a balanced community into sometimes a desert of monoculture.
A constant flow of sand and nutrients connecting these 4 zones is fundamental to the sandy beach community, and seawalls tend to disrupt this connection by blocking it.
Foraging strategies adapted by shorebirds, including beak shape, have co-evolved with marine organisms' burrowing behaviours. Foraging is the most crucial mechanism for survival in preparation for the flight back to the Northern Hemisphere. Waders that return home the fastest have access to the best nesting sites and the healthiest mating partner.
So when a seawall like this one is built, directly where organisms used to burrow, the disturbance is a complete loss of habitat. Seabirds and their prey aren't adapted to living in these conditions.
At low tide, waders feast, and at high tide, they kick back and relax. Roosting is the ultimate form of leisure, where after a long day of eating, shorebirds take to the sand dunes to conserve their energy. This presents a problem as seawalls are built directly on sand dunes, destroying these roosting habitats. And unfortunately, any effort on the bird's part to relocate could result in their life.
If you're a migratory species, every second that you spend more in the air will cost you so much energy that it might risk your life.
But if any waders do survive the journey to a new site, competition can become fierce. Clumped populations resulting from little space are often places of intense showdowns for food and shelter. But luckily, one drawcard shorebirds have is resource partitioning. The variation of what different wader species eat can ease interspecific competition. But without support from the wealth and invertebrate and availability of roosting sites, the very nature of migratory waders is under threat. And if in doubt about the risks caused by seawalls, we can always look to South Korea as an example of the future, with the world's largest seawall built along the Saemangeum coast. Stretching a massive 33 kilometres and enclosing 401 square kilometres of seawater, it's had a dramatic effect on shorebird populations.
Great knots and eastern curlews use this site quite intensively, and there appears to have been a decline in their numbers in northwestern Australia that corresponds to roughly what we'd expect given the amount of area that's been lost.
In this case, a decline in tidal range dried the inner estuarine, causing a large die-off of mollusks. The shorebirds flourished for a time on the dead carcasses of mollusks, but then abandoned the site. It is clear that seawalls on both small and large scales significantly disrupt the ecological balance of coastal ecosystems. As a result, many organisms, including our magnificent shorebirds, are threatened. And unless action is taken in the near future to improve the efficiency of man's adaptations to climate change, Australia may face the same dismal fate that South Korea has experienced.